In a single, searing moment, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows over our secluded retreat, I saw her, my wife, walking hand in hand with another man. The sight was a brutal shattering of all my hopes, a silent scream that tore through the veneer of our love, leaving me stranded in a storm of betrayal and despair. I had envisioned this weekend for months, a meticulously planned escape from the humdrum of everyday life. My wife, Julia, and I had crafted this getaway as our sanctuary, a place where every sunrise was shared and every sunset whispered promises of forever. We arrived at the rustic bed and breakfast on a crisp Friday afternoon, our hearts light and our smiles effortless. The old stone building, nestled among towering oaks and surrounded by a vibrant tapestry of autumn hues, exuded charm and tranquility. It was the perfect setting for rekindling romance, a haven away from the pressures of work, life, and the relentless pace of modern existence. That evening, as we prepared for a candlelit dinner in the cozy dining hall, I marveled at how effortlessly Julia transformed under the soft, warm light. Her laughter filled the air like a familiar melody, and I savored the intimacy of whispered conversations and knowing glances exchanged across the table. Everything seemed idyllic, the world outside forgotten in our shared haven. Yet, beneath that perfect surface, an uneasy feeling began to gnaw at me, a subtle dissonance I couldn't quite place. After dinner, we wandered through the B&B's garden, where the crisp air was redolent with the scent of blooming roses and damp earth. I held her hand as we strolled along the winding paths, the quiet rustle of leaves underfoot marking our steps. The serenity of the moment belied an undercurrent of tension that only I seemed to notice, a feeling that, somehow, not all was as it appeared. Later that night, when we returned to our room, an elegantly decorated space with a view of the starlit sky, I settled into the quiet solitude of our private retreat. I reflected on the beauty of our time together, the tender moments we'd shared, and a persistent, nagging thought began to surface. Why did Julia's texts seem more frequent lately? I had always known her to be an open book, never one for secrets. Yet, in the soft glow of our bedside lamp, I recalled subtle hints, a furtive glance at her phone, a brief, unexplained pause when I mentioned an upcoming plan. I tried to dismiss these as quirks born of a busy day, but a seed of doubt had been planted deep in my heart. The next morning, I awoke before dawn, determined to shake off the lingering unease and embrace the promise of a new day. I stepped onto the dew-kissed balcony, letting the cool air wash over me, and resolved to focus on the beauty around me. But as I glanced back at our room, a chill ran down my spine. The bed was disheveled, and a faint, unfamiliar fragrance lingered in the air. I dismissed it as a remnant of the night before, nothing more. I couldn't have known then that the real workout of that weekend was just beginning. Later that afternoon, I decided to take a walk through the village. The narrow cobblestone streets, lined with quaint shops and smiling locals, usually brought a sense of peace and community. But as I strolled alone, my thoughts drifted back to Julia's mysterious behavior. A foreboding weight clung to me, a sense that something was amiss. I found myself retracing moments in my memory, scrutinizing every gesture and every unguarded smile for hints of a hidden life. That's when I saw it. Across the square, in front of a small, charming cafe, I caught a glimpse of her. My breath hitched as I froze in the middle of the street. There, under the awning of the cafe, Julia was standing with another man. They were close, too close for my comfort. I watched, heart pounding, as they casually held hands, laughing softly as if they were the only two people in the world. In that frozen moment, time seemed to slow, the world around me blurred into insignificance as I processed the sight before me. Every joyful memory of our weekend, the laughter, the intimate glances, the whispered promises, collapsed under the weight of a single, devastating image. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The man with her was not someone I recognized from the village. He had an easy smile and a relaxed air that contrasted starkly with the tension I felt. Their hands were intertwined naturally, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. And yet, to me, it was anything but ordinary. I stood there, rooted to the spot, the noise of the bustling street fading into a suffocating silence. My mind raced through every moment of our shared life, questioning, doubting, and ultimately, realizing the painful truth. My wife was betraying me, and this romantic weekend, a sanctuary I had cherished, was now irrevocably tainted by her secret. Overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment, I slowly backed away, trying to process the scene I had witnessed. The shock was a physical ache, a tightness in my chest and a hollow pit in my stomach that threatened to swallow me whole. I found a secluded spot nearby, hidden behind a cluster of trees, and sat there for what felt like an eternity, tears blurring my vision. I replayed every detail, the gentle grasp of his hand, the soft laughter they shared, the warmth of their proximity that now burned like a brand on my soul. It was a moment of shattering clarity, one that stripped away all pretense and revealed the raw, unvarnished truth. As the realization set in, I felt my world collapse into a chaotic swirl of emotions. Anger, sorrow, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss crashed over me in a torrent. I had always believed that our love was built on trust, on mutual respect and an unspoken understanding that we were each other's safe haven. And now, that belief was shattered by a single, incontrovertible moment. I was forced to confront the fact that everything I had once held dear was nothing but an illusion, a carefully maintained facade that hid a secret betrayal. In the midst of this emotional chaos, I gathered myself and slowly made my way back to the B&B. My steps were heavy, each one echoing with the weight of my shattered trust. I didn't speak a word on the journey back. My mind was a tumult of thoughts, each one a reminder of the betrayal that had just unfolded before my eyes. I knew that nothing would ever be the same, that the magical promise of our romantic weekend had been irreversibly tainted by the truth. Now, as I sit alone in the quiet confines of my room, I can't help but wonder what comes next. The digital records of that fateful day, the quiet observations, and the raw, painful image of her holding hands with another man have all become a part of my story, a story that I never wished to live, but one that now defines my reality. I feel the need to gather my thoughts, to document every detail, to understand how a life once filled with gentle trust and shared dreams could unravel so completely in the span of a single moment. I open my journal, and with trembling hands, I begin to write down everything, every fleeting image, every emotion that surged within me. I write about the sound of my own heartbeat as I stood frozen in the street, the taste of bitter tears that blurred my vision, and the slow, crushing realization that our love had been a lie. I write to preserve the memory of what I have seen, to hold on to the truth even as my world crumbles. In these pages, I seek to find some semblance of order amidst the chaos, to transform the overwhelming pain into a narrative that might one day lead me to healing. This is the moment when the secret is no longer hidden, when the evidence of betrayal is laid bare in my mind and in these written words. The receipt for a simple dinner has morphed into a symbol of everything that has been lost, of the fragile trust that has been shattered, and of the daunting task of confronting a love that was never as perfect as it once seemed. I know that soon I will have to face her, to ask the questions that burn in my heart, and to demand answers that will either destroy the last vestiges of our shared life or force us to confront the painful reality and perhaps, one day, forge a new path from the ashes. Even now, as I write these words in the soft glow of early dawn, I feel the first stirrings of a resolve, a determination to reclaim my truth, no matter how painful the journey may be. The memory of that haunting image, of her hand in another's, will never fade, but I am beginning to understand that I have the strength to rise from this darkness. With each word in my journal, I piece together not only the evidence of betrayal but also the shards of my shattered identity. And though the road ahead is uncertain, I know that confronting this truth is the only way to rebuild a future defined by honesty, self-respect, and the enduring hope that even the deepest wounds can one day lead to a new beginning. In the days following that baffling dinner receipt, I felt like I was living in a twilight world, a place where every routine moment was stained with an undercurrent of suspicion. What began as a single, inexplicable charge on our shared bank account soon turned into a relentless inner battle. Every time I glanced at the screen of my phone or the printed statement on the counter, I felt a cold prickle of dread. I couldn't shake the haunting image of that receipt, a silent declaration that something in our life was off-kilter. It wasn't just a financial error, it was a rift, a hidden fracture in the foundation of our trust. For several days, I wandered through our home in a daze, each room echoing with memories that now felt tainted. The living room, where we once laughed over cups of coffee, now seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I began to scrutinize every mundane detail, the time she left for work, the way she tucked her phone away when I passed by, even the fleeting expressions on her face when she thought I wasn't watching. I found myself questioning every word, every gesture, wondering if I had been too blind, too wrapped up in the comfort of our shared routine to notice the subtle signs of deception. Driven by a need to confirm my growing suspicions, I started poring over our financial records with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I printed out every bank statement from the past few months, highlighting any unusual transactions that didn't fit with our well-worn patterns. Amidst the bills for groceries and utility payments, that single dinner receipt from La Belle Vie stood out like a scarlet letter, a charge for a meal meant for two on a night when I was unequivocally home alone. I noted the date and time with meticulous care, my hands shaking as I circled the details. It wasn't the amount that disturbed me, but the context. How could she have dined with someone when I had been there, a solitary witness to our quiet existence? My mind churned with possibilities, each more painful than the last. Had she been sneaking out, using our shared finances to cover for secret rendezvous? I began to recall moments that I had once dismissed as trivial, a sudden, unexplained absence, a text message hurriedly deleted, a lingering look on her face when our eyes met. Now, each memory seemed to carry the heavy weight of hidden betrayal. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that our life together was not the seamless tapestry I had always believed it to be. Instead, it was a delicate construct, vulnerable to the slightest tear. In the isolation of our quiet apartment, I turned to the only tool I felt I could trust, the truth laid out in our financial records. I spent long, sleepless nights with a single purpose, to piece together the puzzle of her clandestine activities. I began creating a detailed log of every discrepancy, a taxi fare on nights she claimed to be working late, small charges at places I'd never heard her mention, and even a series of online orders for items that seemed lavish for someone with our modest lifestyle. With each entry, I felt my heart tighten further, each new detail a painful confirmation that the dinner receipt was not an isolated mistake but the tip of a much larger iceberg. The process was both excruciating and revealing. I found myself meticulously documenting the time and location of every unusual transaction, cross-referencing them with our daily schedule. I used a spreadsheet to track the data, dates, amounts, and vendor names, all meticulously recorded as if they were pieces of a cryptic code that I had to decipher. Every number, every line of text, was a silent scream in the darkness, urging me to face the possibility that my wife had been leading a double life. At the same time, I began to observe subtle changes in her behavior with a new, haunted perspective. I recalled the way she'd sometimes glance at her phone with a fleeting, guilty expression, the way her smile would falter when I mentioned our plans for the weekend. Those moments, once filled with innocent charm, now carried an ominous weight. I watched as she became increasingly secretive, locking her phone whenever I was near, her responses growing shorter and more curt. I found myself scanning her face for any hint of remorse or evasion, and every furtive movement confirmed my worst fears. One rainy evening, as the sound of raindrops tapped steadily against our window, I sat in the dim light of our living room, my laptop open and my notes spread out like scattered pieces of a shattered mirror. I reread the dinner receipt, the bank statements, and my scribbled observations, and the truth crystallized with a cold, unyielding clarity. The evidence pointed in one unmistakable direction: Melissa had been dining out with someone who wasn't me. And that realization was a wound that deepened with every passing minute. Desperation crept in as I wondered how I had allowed this to happen. Had I been too complacent? Too wrapped up in the routines of our life to notice the subtle signals of betrayal? I questioned every smile, every shared moment, each one now a painful reminder of the trust one had lost. The sense of isolation was overwhelming, as if I were stranded on an island of disbelief while the world around me continued obliviously. The phone, the receipts, the hushed whispers, they all formed a tapestry of secrets that I was now forced to confront. In a desperate bid for more answers, I began to check our home security footage from the previous week, small snippets of video that might reveal the hours when Melissa had been unaccounted for. I watched, heart in my throat, as the camera captured her leaving our home at times I hadn't noticed, her figure disappearing into the night. The images were grainy and fragmented, but they confirmed a troubling pattern. There were nights when I was sure I had been alone, yet the footage showed her slipping out quietly, the door closing behind her with a finality that now seemed laced with deceit. Every frame, every whispered sound of the door, echoed in my mind, reinforcing the painful certainty that our marriage was built on secrets. That revelation was the turning point, an irrevocable moment when the evidence could no longer be denied. The quiet of our home, once a source of comfort, had become an oppressive weight. I realized that the dinner receipt was not a solitary aberration but a symptom of a larger, more insidious betrayal. My world, meticulously ordered and steeped in trust, was crumbling, and I was left to pick up the shards of a life that had once promised forever. Torn between a desire to confront Melissa immediately and the fear of an explosive confrontation that might destroy what little remained, I found myself trapped in a state of agonizing indecision. I spent countless nights rehearsing in my mind the conversation that would have to come, each word, each question carefully chosen to pry open the hidden truth. I wrote and rewrote drafts in my journal, trying to find the balance between raw emotion and the cold clarity that the evidence demanded. How long, Melissa? I repeated silently, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and despair. Who is the person behind these receipts? Why did you lie about being home? Each question was a plea for answers, a desperate attempt to reclaim the certainty that had been stolen from me. In those sleepless hours, I also reached out to a trusted friend, a confidant who had been by my side through our happiest and darkest moments. Over whispered phone calls, I shared the fragments of my discovery, each detail of the mounting evidence. His voice, calm and reassuring, reminded me that I deserved the truth, however painful it might be. "You have every right to know," he said softly, "and you must confront this if you want to reclaim your life." His words, though gentle, fortified my resolve, turning my simmering dread into a steely determination. I compiled the digital dossier, a collection of screenshots, bank records, and my own frantic notes, until it became a tangible representation of the hidden life that Melissa had concealed. Every detail, from the suspicious dinner receipt to the patterns of her late-night departures, was laid out in stark, unyielding clarity. The dossier was no longer just a set of documents, it was a mirror reflecting the painful reality of our marriage, a reality that I could no longer live in denial. Now, as I sit alone in the quiet of the evening with the dossier spread out before me, the sound of rain tapping softly against the window, I feel the crushing weight of the truth. Every page is a testament to the betrayal that has seeped into every corner of my life. The question that now burns in my mind is no longer could it be true, but how do I face it? The evidence is undeniable, and the secret that has haunted me for days is no longer a whisper, it is a roar that demands to be heard. I know that soon, I must confront Melissa with the full extent of what I have uncovered. The thought fills me with a dread that is tempered only by a fierce determination to reclaim my dignity. I am caught between the terror of an explosive confrontation and the suffocating pain of silent uncertainty. Yet, I understand that only by forcing the truth into the open can I begin to mend the fractures in my soul and rebuild the shattered remnants of our life. In the coming days, as I wrestle with the final decision of how to confront her, I am overwhelmed by the realization that this dinner receipt was only the beginning. It was the spark that ignited a slow, painful descent into a world of hidden lies and secret rendezvous. A world that has left my heart battered and my trust irrevocably broken. Each new piece of evidence, each subtle detail I've documented, reinforces the stark reality that our love was built on a fragile illusion, one that could be shattered by a single, unexpected detail. Now, with the dossier as my only shield and the raw truth burning in my mind, I stand at the precipice of a choice that will forever alter my life. I must confront the betrayal head-on, to demand answers and force the hidden truths to emerge from the shadows. It is a path I know will be fraught with pain, tears, and a final, irrevocable separation from the life I once believed was unbreakable. But it is also the only way forward, a necessary step to reclaim my own identity and begin the long, arduous journey toward healing and renewal. That afternoon, when I finally stepped out from behind the safety of my doubts and marched into the quiet dining room, the world around me seemed to slow into a single, crushing moment. The table was set just as it had been on countless previous weekends, warm light from a crystal chandelier, the soft clink of cutlery that once symbolized our shared joy. Today, however, the same table bore the weight of my raw anguish. I sat across from her, my eyes fixed on the woman I once loved, now haunted by betrayal. The sight of her, with tear-streaked cheeks and trembling hands, was almost too much to bear. I opened the conversation not with angry shouts but with a steady, pained calm that betrayed the storm raging inside me. "Rebecca, I saw you," I began, each word measured, holding hands with someone else, right there on the cafe steps. "Our romantic weekend, it's over." Her eyes, wide and pained, flickered between mine and the silence of the evidence I had gathered. I had watched that moment over and over in my mind, the way her hand fit so naturally in his, the gentle squeeze that said more than words ever could. In that split second, everything we had built together unraveled. Her voice, barely above a whisper, trembled as she tried to speak. I'm sorry. I never meant," but I cut her off, my words slicing through the fragile air. "Sorry isn't enough, Rebecca. I trusted you. We trusted each other. How could you let this happen?" The questions poured out, not as an explosive tirade but as a litany of broken promises. How many times did you lie about where you were? Who is he? When did our love become so empty that you sought comfort in someone else's arms? The room filled with a heavy silence punctuated by her muffled sobs. I could see the regret in her eyes as she tried to explain. A life of loneliness, a desperate search for something to fill a void she couldn't even name. She murmured about feeling trapped in a routine, about needing a spark to feel alive. Each explanation, delivered in fragmented bursts of remorse, only deepened the rift between us. In that moment, I realized that our romantic weekend, the escape I had envisioned as a celebration of our togetherness, was nothing more than a stage for your hidden betrayal. I pressed on, demanding to know if it was a one-time lapse or a pattern of infidelity. How long? I asked, my voice cracking with the weight of a love now betrayed. Her eyes filled with tears, and with a trembling sigh, she confessed that it had been happening for months, secret meetings, whispered rendezvous, and stolen moments that she had carefully concealed behind lies and excuses. The confession fell like a death knell over the remnants of our shared dreams. As the truth spilled out, the reality of it all struck me with brutal force. Every tender moment we'd once shared, every quiet dinner, every smile exchanged over mundane chores, was now a painful reminder of the life that had been nothing but a delicate facade. The pain was overwhelming. I felt as if my heart were being ripped apart, each beat a painful reminder of trust broken and promises shattered. For a long time, we sat in silence, the only sound the soft, intermittent sniffles that punctuated the room. I looked at Rebecca, trying to see if there was any part of her that still held the love and honesty we had once shared, but all I saw were the traces of guilt and sorrow that told me there was nothing left to salvage. I realized, with a crushing clarity, that the bond we had built over years of shared routine and silent trust had been irreparably damaged. In that moment, I felt a profound loneliness, not just from her betrayal, but from the knowledge that the future we once dreamed of was now irreversibly lost. The fallout was immediate and all-encompassing. In the days that followed, our home became a hushed battlefield of whispered regrets and strained silences. Family members, once oblivious to any hint of trouble, now exchanged sympathetic glances and cautious whispers when we were together. Friends, who had always celebrated our perfect union, looked at us with a mixture of pity and disbelief. I found myself isolated, both physically and emotionally, wandering through the empty halls of our once joyful home with the heavy burden of a shattered trust weighing on every step. The pain of that confrontation, raw and unfiltered, pushed me to the brink of despair. I spent sleepless nights rereading the evidence, revisiting every moment that had led to this ultimate betrayal. My journal became a sanctuary for my fractured thoughts, a place where I recorded every tear, every anguished heartbeat, and every bitter memory that now defined the landscape of our shared past. With each written word, I tried to understand how something so beautiful could turn into a lie so profound. I questioned whether I had been complicit in my own downfall, too blinded by the comfort of routine to notice the subtle signs of deceit. Yet amid the heartache, I began to sense a quiet resolve emerging from the depths of my despair. In the solitude of my grief, I realized that I could no longer allow this betrayal to define me. I had to reclaim my identity from the ruins of our once perfect love. I sought solace in therapy, where gentle guidance helped me navigate the labyrinth of emotions that now consumed me. My therapist's words, tender and unwavering, slowly helped me understand that while the scars of betrayal might never fully fade, they could become the foundation upon which I rebuilt my life. Healing, she reminded me during one long, tearful session, begins when you choose to embrace the truth, no matter how painful, and let it guide you toward a future defined by self-respect and hope. I began to take small steps toward renewal. I reconnected with old friends who saw beyond the facade of a broken marriage, reminding me that I was more than the sum of my pain. I started taking long walks in the early morning, the crisp air and gentle sunrise offering small, fragile promises of a new beginning. Slowly, the raw agony that had once threatened to overwhelm me began to subside into a persistent, if sorrowful, determination to move forward. I returned to my passion for writing, using the pen as a conduit to transform my anguish into art, a series of poems and essays that captured the bitter beauty of betrayal and the tentative hope of renewal. In the weeks and months that followed, the memories of that fateful confrontation continued to echo in every corner of my life. There were days when the pain would surge unexpectedly, a reminder of the moment I had seen her hand entwined with another, the image seared into my heart. Yet, with each new day, I began to learn that I was capable of more than the despair that had once defined me. I discovered that the truth, however harsh, held within it the seeds of transformation. The path to rebuilding was not linear. There were setbacks and moments when the weight of the past threatened to drag me back into darkness. I faced nights of relentless tears, days filled with the heavy burden of public judgment, and long stretches of loneliness that seemed endless. But gradually, I began to piece together a new version of myself, one forged in the fire of heartbreak and tempered by the slow, steady light of healing. I learned that forgiveness did not mean erasing the pain, but rather, accepting it as a part of who I was and using it to fuel my transformation. I began to see that every scar on my heart was a testament to my resilience, a symbol of the battles I had fought and survived. Now, as I sit in the quiet solitude of an early morning that promises the possibility of a new day, I look back on the long road that has brought me here. The memory of that devastating confrontation still lingers like a ghost, a reminder of the moment when my world was shattered by the truth. And yet, in that same moment of unbearable loss, I found the strength to start anew. I have learned that even when the foundations of trust are destroyed, we have the power to rebuild, piece by piece, with each step guided by truth, courage, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of renewal. I stand at the precipice of a future that is uncertain and fraught with challenges, but also filled with the quiet promise of redemption. I have come to understand that while the perfect illusion of our once shared life is gone forever, I still have the capacity to shape my destiny. The love I once believed in has been irrevocably altered, but it has also given me a painful, invaluable lesson. That trust must be nurtured and that the truth, no matter how devastating, is the only path to genuine freedom. This is my rebirth, a transformation born of betrayal and the long, arduous journey toward healing. Every tear shed, every sleepless night spent in anguish, and every whispered word of regret has become a stepping stone toward a future defined not by the echoes of the past, but by the strength and resilience of the human spirit. I have chosen to walk this path, even if it means enduring the lingering pain of shattered dreams, for I know that beyond the darkness lies the possibility of a life rebuilt on the unwavering foundation of truth. As the soft light of dawn breaks over the horizon, I take a deep, steadying breath and step forward into a world that is both scarred and hopeful. I carry with me every painful memory of that fateful day, every betrayal, every tear, as a reminder that I survived the storm. And with that survival comes a quiet, unyielding determination to forge a future where my heart, though marked by sorrow, beats with the promise of renewal, honesty, and the enduring power of hope.